Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: social media ban lifted after Nepal protests, internet disrupted as Red Sea cables cut, Norway's ruling Labour Party re-elected while populists gain, coalition of 26 countries commit to Ukraine post-war peacekeeping, civilians trapped in South Sudan siege face starvation and violence, and drier weather threatens India's tea exports. Starting with politics, Norway ruling Labour Party re-elected, populists gain. In a ballot dominated by concerns over rising living costs and wars in Ukraine and Gaza, incumbent Prime Minister Store's Labour and four smaller left-leaning parties won 87 seats, above the 85 needed for a majority. Despite the left's victory, the ballot showed a shift further to the right among conservative voters, with the populist anti-immigration Progress Party recording its best-ever result. Trump changes Department of Defense to Department of War. The move is the latest in Trump's efforts to rebrand the U.S. military, including by presiding over an extraordinary military parade in downtown Washington, D.C., and restoring the original names of military bases that were changed after racial justice protests in 2020. Court annals Istanbul Congress of Turkey's main opposition dismisses leadership. The court's ruling coincides with an escalating crackdown on municipalities controlled by the Republican People's Party, or CHP, which resulted in a series of arrests beginning in March with Istanbul Mayor Imamoglu, a prominent opposition figure widely seen as the leading challenger to President Erdogan's two-decade rule. Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba resigns. It followed growing calls to take responsibility for a historic defeat in this year's parliamentary election. Since he came to power, Ishiba's coalition has lost its majorities in both the lower and upper houses of parliament amid voter anger over rising living costs. Sri Lanka's former president arrested. The arrest raises questions about the direction of the country's new government, which was elected to fight corruption and rebuild the economy. Wickremesinghe is accused of misusing public funds to stop over in Britain and attend a university ceremony in London where his wife received an honorary professorship. The relatively minor charge is seen by government critics as a diversion away from fundamental economic reform, including tackling endemic corruption. Moving to stories in conflict, 19 killed in Nepal in protest over social media ban, corruption. A government decision last week to block access to several social media platforms, including Facebook, has fueled anger among the young, triggering Nepal's worst unrest in decades. About 90% of Nepal's 30 million people use the internet. Some of the protesters forced their way into the parliament complex in Kathmandu. Coalition of 26 countries commit to Ukraine post-war peacekeeping. The force is a key pillar of the security guarantees a coalition of mainly European countries want to offer to Ukraine if the war ends via a peace deal or a ceasefire. Other countries such as Japan, Australia and Canada had also committed to the coalition. However, there is also growing concern that Russian President Putin is showing no interest in a peace accord. Putin also warned that any Western troops deployed to Ukraine would be a legitimate target for Moscow's army. UAE warns Israel on West Bank. Israel's annexation of any part of the occupied West Bank would be a red line that would end the pursuit of regional integration, warned the United Arab Emirates, the main signatory of the landmark agreement that saw Israel normalize relations with three Arab nations. It comes as US President Trump issued a last warning to Hamas, saying the Palestinian militant group must accept a deal to release Israeli hostages in Gaza. Houthis drone attack on Israel's Ramon airport. A drone launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels has hit an airport in southern Israel in a significant failure of Israel's air defense systems. Israel said the Houthis launched multiple drones, some of which were intercepted outside of Israel. It followed recent Israeli airstrikes, which killed 12 Houthis leaders. Civilians trapped in South Sudan face starvation and violence. Civilians in El Fasher, North Darfur, remain trapped under a siege by the Rapid Support Forces (RSF), which has reportedly targeted people attempting to leave. Blocked roads, desert barriers, and attacks on escapees, combined with severely limited food supplies, have left tens of thousands at risk of starvation and hardship. It comes as UN peacekeeping missions in South Sudan and Congo are under threat following US funding cuts. Here's the latest in economics. Elon Musk could receive largest corporate payment in history. Tesla's board has proposed a $1 trillion compensation plan for CEO Elon Musk. The move underscores the hold Musk has over the electric car maker as it attempts to transform into an AI and robotics powerhouse. The proposed plan will grant Musk up to 12% of Tesla's stock, but requires Tesla's valuation to rise nearly eightfold, or about $7.5 billion over the next decade. Tesla's US market share dropped to a near 8-year low in August as buyers chose electric vehicles from a growing stable of rivals. Anthropic to pay authors $1.5 billion over books used to train AI chatbots. The landmark settlement could mark a turning point in legal battles between AI companies and the writers, visual artists, and other creative professionals who accuse them of copyright infringement. The company has agreed to pay authors or publishers about $3,000 for each of an estimated 500,000 books covered by the settlement. Pakistan signs $8.5 billion in investment deals with China. Pakistan's Prime Minister, Sharif, signed $8.5 billion in new investment agreements with China during a visit to Beijing, covering sectors such as agriculture, renewable energy, electric vehicles, health, and steel. These investments will further strengthen the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a flagship component of China's broader Belt and Road Initiative. Drier weather threatens India's tea exports and global supply. India's tea industry, centered in Assam and Darjeeling, is facing mounting threats from climate change as hotter, drier conditions reduce yields and shorten harvest seasons. As other major producers like Kenya and Sri Lanka face similar weather shocks, the global tea market may be entering a period of volatility and supply shortages. US job openings data falls to levels rarely seen since pandemic. The decline in job openings potentially indicates a cooling in the labor market. The 7.18 million job listings in July was only the second reading under the 7.2 level since the end of 2020 and lowest since September 2024, when just more than 7.1 openings were reported. Now for news in development. How will AI affect jobs? Artificial intelligence will bring about an impending change to the labor market, either through automation or augmentation, according to a Jobs and Skills Australia report. The body assessed various tasks within occupations and ranked them based on the degree to which AI could impact them. It found clerical and administrative roles were most at risk of automation. Ethiopia aims to plant 700 million seedlings in one day. The national campaign is part of an ambitious conservation initiative that aims to plant 50 billion trees by 2026. The reforestation campaign has been a personal project of Prime Minister Abiy since 2019. Abiy took power in 2018 as a reformist. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for making peace with neighboring Eritrea, but a war that erupted shortly afterward in the Ethiopian region of Tigray damaged his reputation as a peacemaker. He faces another rebellious uprising in the Amhara region. South Korea negotiates release of workers detained in US immigration raid. South Korea said it also was in talks with the US to allow the re-entry of hundreds of its citizens who were arrested last week and are due to flown home following an immigration raid at a car battery project. About 300 South Koreans were among 475 people arrested at the site of a $4.3 billion project by Hyundai Motor an LG Energy solution to build batteries for electric cars. Undersea cables cut in the Red Sea, disrupting internet. There has been concern about the cables being targeted in a campaign by Yemen's Houthis, which the rebels describe as an effort to pressure Israel to end its war with Hamas in Gaza. The Houthis have denied attacking the lines in the past. Microsoft confirmed its Azure cloud services were disrupted by the undersea cable cuts in the Red Sea. Millions in northeastern Nigeria face acute hunger. The acute hunger has reached a record of nearly 31 million, according to the UN, following escalating violence by various militant groups and cuts in global aid. Finally, our social news. 850,000 Syrian refugees have returned home since Assad's fall. Syria's conflict that began in March 2011 has killed nearly 500,000 people and displaced half the country's pre-war population of 23 million. More than 5 million Syrians fled the country as refugees, most of them to neighboring countries. How Sweden's second-hand-only shopping mall is changing retail. As global demand for pre-loved fashion and second-hand products grows rapidly, Retuna, the world's first retail center to sell only second-hand items, has become an internationally recognized model of circular retail, showing how sustainable consumption can be mainstreamed when supported by infrastructure, design, and policy. 72% of flying insects lost in 20 years at untouched ecosystem. The loss of an annual average of 6.6% in flying insects was most strongly associated with rising summer temperatures. Researchers tracked insect populations in a remote location in Colorado between 2004 to 2024, one of the first long-term studies to quantify insect declines in a pristine environment relatively untouched by humans. It shows that even these types of ecosystems are vulnerable to climate change. Common sugar builds stronger cancer-killing T cells. Glucose, best known as the fuel that powers our cells, also helps immune cells called T cells communicate and organize their attack on tumors. By turning sugar into special building blocks, T cells strengthen their internal signals and become far more effective cancer killers. Impact of chatbots on mental health is a warning over future of AI. The case of the US teenager Adam Rain, who committed suicide after months-long conversations with ChatGPT, highlights the danger of unintended consequences in superintelligent AI as experts warn of the unforeseen impact of chatbots on mental health. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.